that's the only pole on the other side of the South Pole from Little Mark. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
Hi, how are you? I hope you always healthy. Welcome to my channel, World History Official. In this video, I would like to talk about the moon in flat Earth. This is the truth. I will tell the truth. It's painful, but better to get hurt by the truth than comforted with a lie. Before I start it, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon on my channel if you enjoy. And also, share this information to your family, your friends, and everyone. I can't speak, I had speech disorder. So, I am sorry to use robot voice on the video. Many people complain about this. But now, I had buy a better speech software with good voice. I also put the text on the video, so you can read them if you're not comfortable with this voice. So, here we go. The moon is upon a flat Earth. Let us look at the moon upon the flat Earth model before we prove this has to be the case. The moon moves around us in spiraling circles above the stationary flat Earth, moving from tropic to tropic over the course of 6 months, in an almost identical trajectory to the Sun. One face. All humans on Earth can only ever see one face of the moon, and it appears with the face rotated, with the degree depending on location. The moon covers the full 360 degrees of rotation. Mainstream science simplifies this fact and states the moon is right side up north of the equator, and upside down south of the equator. This isn't true, it appears rotated to different observers in different locations. If the Earth and Moon were both balls, then humans at the far north would see a different face of the moon than those in the far south, with some overlap. The only way we can all see the same face is upon a flat Earth. One can clearly see the moon moving away from the observer, to the vanishing point of a human's eye. Eyes are spherical objects that focus light on the lens at the back. The horizon has nothing to do with the shape of the world, and everything to do with distance. People are fooled into thinking the horizon is the edge of the curve. Phases. We are told the moon's phases are from sunlight via the sun's angle to the moon, but this cannot be the case. This is the mainstream model. But when it is new moon in day in the ball model, we should see a black silhouette. We don't though, we see nothing. We should see a silhouette in the ball model because the sun is so much bigger than the moon and behind it. Also we can see a nearly full moon in the day. This is not possible on the ball Earth, as during the day, the Earth is facing the sun. The Earth would be in the way of someone trying to see the moon in the daytime. Also we can sometimes see the sun and moon in the sky at the same time, for some hours in the days just before and just after the full moon. There is nothing between the sun and moon, so the moon should be 100% lit in the ball model. There is nothing obstructing the massive sun's rays, but the moon appears only 4/5 or so illuminated. If the moon was orbiting the Earth, and both were orbiting the sun, then 6 months later the moon's phases should have swapped over, and each lunar month, the phases should appear different. We are told that the sun gives the moon its light for the phases, but if this were the case, during each lunar month, the moon would be at a different angle to the sun. It would be impossible for the phases to remain the same each lunar month. But they do. Study the two images in the screen to get a full understanding of this. These two images, both present the same mainstream paradox. A. The moon does what it does with its phases each month. B. The moon goes around the sun with the earth. One of these has to be wrong, but we are told that both are true. You can see from the two images that the moon should have a different light reflection from the sun, at different locations around the sun, but at the same time and location of its own lunar month. It should actually act like this, but it doesn't, helping to prove the ball Earth model is a hoax. This might need some contemplation, a pen and paper, or possibly a reread. But it is indisputable. Reflection. The moon cannot be above a ball, or the reflection on the ocean wouldn't reach to the person on the shore, but it does reach an observer on the shore. If the moon were above a ball, the reflection on the ocean would behave much differently. See this picture, where we have pieced in the phantom curvature. Tides. We are told that the gravitational pull of the moon alone creates the tides, but this is also wrong. If the moon was 2,160 miles in diameter, and the Earth 8,000 miles in diameter, the Earth would be 87 times larger, and would attract the smaller mass, the moon, to it, not the other way. We are told the Earth's stronger gravity keeps the moon in orbit. So how can the moon's weaker gravity override Earth's gravity at Earth's lowest points? If the magical error-ridden force called gravity existed, all trees would look like willow trees, and all flowers would wilt in an N shape. But that is for another time. The Earth's tides vary greatly. For example, near the Isle of Wight, there are 4 tides a day. Some beaches have tides which go out far, while others not so much. The mainstream map of tides is not uniform, and would not be caused by a single body moving harmoniously across from east to west. If the moon lifted up the water, it is evident that near the land, the water would be drawn away and low instead of high tide caused. Again, the velocity and path of the moon are uniform, and it follows that if she exerted any influence on the Earth, that influence could only be a uniform influence. But the tides are not uniform. At Port Natal the rise and fall is about 6 feet, while at Beira, about 600 miles up the coast, the rise and fall is 26 feet. This effectually settles the matter that the moon has no influence on the tides. Tides are caused by the gentle and gradual rise and fall of the Earth on the bosom of the mighty deep. In inland lakes, there are no tides, which also proves that the moon cannot attract either the Earth or water to cause tides. But the fact that the basin of the lake is on the Earth which rests on the waters of the deep shows that no tides are possible, as the waters of the lakes together with the Earth rise and fall, and thus the tides at the coast are caused, while there are no tides on waters unconnected with the sea. By Thomas Winship, Zetetic Cosmogony. It is affirmed that the intensity of attraction increases with proximity, and vice versa. How? Then, when the waters are drawn up by the moon from their bed, and away from the Earth's attraction, which at that greater distance from the center is considerably diminished, while that of the moon is proportionately increased, is it possible that all the waters acted on should be prevented leaving the Earth and flying away to the moon? If the moon has power of attraction sufficient to lift the waters of the Earth at all, even a single inch from their deepest receptacles, where the Earth's attraction is much the greater, there is nothing in the theory of attraction of gravitation to prevent her taking to herself all the waters which come within her influence. Let the smaller body once overcome the power of the larger, and the power of the smaller becomes greater than when it first operated, because the matter acted on is nearer to it. Proximity is greater, and therefore power is greater. How then can the waters of the ocean immediately underneath the moon flow towards the shores, and so cause a flood tide? Water flows, it is said, through the law of gravity, or attraction of the Earth's center. Is it possible then for the moon, having once overcome the power of the earth, to let go her hold upon the waters, through the influence of a power which she has conquered, and which therefore, is less than her own. The above and other difficulties which exist in connection with the explanation of the tides afforded by the Newtonian system, have led many, including Sir Isaac Newton himself, to admit that such explanation is the least satisfactory portion of the theory of gravitation. Thus we have been carried forward by the sheer force of evidence to the conclusion that the tides of the sea do not arise from the attraction of the moon, but simply from the rising and falling of the floating earth in the waters of the great deep. That calmness which is found to exist at the bottom of the great seas could not be possible if the waters were alternately raised by the moon and pulled down by the earth. By Dr. Samuel Robotham, Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe. Even Sir Isaac Newton himself confessed that the explanation of the moon's action on the tides was the least satisfactory part of his theory of gravitation. This theory asserts that the larger object attracts the smaller, and the mass of the moon being reckoned as only 1/8 of that of the earth, it follows that, if, by the presumed force of gravitation, the earth revolves round the sun, much more, for the same reason, should the moon do so likewise, instead of which that willful orb still continues to go round our world. Tides vary greatly in height, owing chiefly to the different configurations of the adjoining lands. At Chepstow it rises to 60 feet, at Portishead to 50, while at Dublin Bay it is but 1–2, and at Wexford only 5 feet. That the earth itself has a slight tremulous motion may be seen in the movement of the spirit level, even when fixed as steadily as possible, and that the sea has a fluctuation may be witnessed by the oscillation of an anchored ship in the calmest day of summer. By what means the tides are so regularly affected is at present only conjectured, possibly it may be by atmospheric pressure on the waters of the great deep, and perhaps even the moon itself, as suggested by the late Dr. Robotham, may influence the atmosphere, increasing or diminishing its barometric pressure, and indirectly the rise and fall of the earth in the waters. By David Wardlaw Scott, Terra Firma. The sun and moon together create the tides. The biggest tides are when the sun and moon are both above the horizon and one near to the other. The combination of the sun and moon locations most probably create electromagnetic currents. Tides only happen in the oceans, never in creeks, rivers or marshes. The ocean is made up of salt water, and salt is a conductor of electricity, and therefore has an EMF. Salt molecules are made of sodium ions and chlorine ions, and an ion is an atom that has an electrical charge. Here's a sea temperature map upon the flat Earth. It's also possible this has a bearing on tides too. I've noticed that when the sun is over say the Atlantic then it's low tide, and when the moon is over the Atlantic it is high tide. In my research into electromagnetic energy is that the sun is very energetic to humans, animals and even gives food to plants by chlorophyll. And the moon is the negative energy as it putrefies plants etc. So in studying I've noticed it may be affected by this dual positive and negative together and they work in harmony with the ions in the water and electromagnetic fields. By Anonymous. When we look at tides on the flat Earth model things make more sense. Size, distance, and speed. The moon is 32 or so miles wide, as is the sun. The moon is around 3,000 miles away. Do you really think you can see details on something 235,000 miles away, when you can't see details on a mountain 70 miles away on a clear day? I have a theory that the moon could be as near as 700 miles away, but I would need a sextant to do my own calculations, but I don't have one. One thing's for sure, it is much closer than we are told. Currently, I cannot go against the 3,000 miles away distance. The moon is very similar in distance from Earth as the sun is, but is a bit closer to Earth as the moon appears in front of the sun on a solar eclipse. The moon is anything up to a few hundred miles nearer to Earth than the sun is, but the altitude of the moon, and or the sun too, varies. How do we know this? We can witness total solar eclipses and annular solar eclipses. The moon travels around 60 to 70 minutes a day slower than the sun in a 24-hour period. The moon's movement, forward motion, is not the forward route through the zodiac as we see it in the sky. The moon's travel is the other way as the backdrop of the zodiac spins and moves faster, as viewed from a human eye. This is also the same rule for the sun. The constellations go much faster than the moon as viewed from a human eye, so the moon appears to go through a zodiac constellation each 2.5 days or so in reverse, but this is seen in astrology as normal forward. The constellations only go slightly faster than the sun, as viewed from the human eye, so it spends a longer time in each constellation, about a month. Here are images from Stellarium, showing the movement of the moon from a baseline in southern Spain, then 48 hours later, and then another 48 hours later. The moon really is moving as Stellarium suggests, essentially ball Earth software. Its line in the sky is correct. A new moon is basically when the sun overtakes the moon, as it moves quicker. A lunar overtaken. A full moon is basically when the moon is as far away from the sun as it can be within the current lunar cycle, but the sun is slowly catching up and now moving into the same semicircle. A lunar run but can't hide. Nodes. This image is presented as a fact, with the lunar nodes around the globe Earth, the cause being due to an approximate 5% tilt of the moon's orbits. Within the flat Earth model, this is simply explained. We look up and we see the moon moving above and below the sun's apparent path, which is known as the ecliptic in ball Earth terms. In flat Earth terms, the ecliptic is just a line that shows the sun's path, nothing more. So over the course of time, twice a month, the moon crosses above and then below the sun's trajectory line. See image above where the moon is above the line. Where the moon crosses it, this is a node, in astrological terms. The moon spends half the time above this line, and half the time below this line, from a human eye on our flat Earth. The nodes are intersections. It's important you understand and remember this simple nodes explanation for the eclipse chapter much later on. We will use the term flat Earth node from now on to avoid confusion. The moon at a node is related to eclipses, and to the past and future in astrology. The south node natal placement of a person is what one brings into this incarnation. The north node natal placement is where one can evolve and learn the most, where one should be heading. NASA. Why are there no photos of the moon from one of the thousands of satellites we supposedly have in space? Or any photos from the ISS, supposedly it is manned all the time, but no photos of the moon? The Hubble telescope hasn't taken any photos of the moon, as it is apparently on high zoom mode. NASA has also made some errors with the moon. Here is the moon being supposedly filmed from the ISS. For sure this is a really poor effort at Photoshop, a white circle, maybe the license ran out and they had to use Microsoft Paint? Here is a famous NASA image on the left, the Earth from the moon. But this is wrong. The Earth is supposed to be 4 times bigger than the moon, but the Earth appears about the same size the moon does from Earth. The image on the left should have looked more like the one on the right if the ball model were true.
And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the slope from Little Mark. And I think it's quite stunning that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.